quite a few of the leading lights in the property and construction industry, people like Paul Morello, who you're going to see this afternoon, they refer to the link or the relationship between office design and business performance as the Holy Grail. They consider it elusive, intangible, a myth even. But the problem with this is, if we continue to think that that link between workplace and productivity is not demonstrated, we continue to ignore it. And that's what's happening. We kind of go on and we do not account for the impact of our spaces on productivity. And I don't think that's just naive, I think that's downright irresponsible of us. And one of the consequences, because we think that productivity measurement is too difficult, when it comes to the business case for our workplace projects, we ignore it. Again, we ignore it. Our business cases are purely weighted in terms of property savings. And we ignore those business benefits. And I think that perpetuates this notion, this wrong notion, that the office is a cost burden rather than an investment in our business with very lucrative returns. And furthermore, even when we design our spaces and we build our new workspaces, we very rarely go back and check whether they did have a negative or positive impact on productivity. Again, ignoring it. If our design saves a little bit of money, saves a bit of space, we consider it successful, with total disregard of the consequence for the occupying business. We've all seen these charts. So, you know, the biggest asset of any organisation is its people, and they're also the biggest cost. And the purpose of these charts, which we've all seen, we might even see more today, who knows, is it kind of demonstrates that ratio between salaries or people costs and the cost of building construction and ongoing operation. And the idea, the implication of this is that small changes to the building can have massive, significant, ongoing impact on people and the business. I actually think these charts underestimate the impact, because personally, if I'm employing people, I expect them to make at least 3 times their salary. I expect them to generate revenue. So I think this is an underestimation. I want to put revenue in there rather than cost. And these charts have been around for ages. You know, last year, Paul Gosky, he presented the same chart, but his chart dated back to 1965, 50 years ago. We've been discussing that ratio since then, and yet I don't think we've moved on. We still haven't cracked, and we're still not accounting for the impact of our workplaces on productivity. And of course, what the FD wants to know is, well, tell me how to measure productivity. Tell me how to predict productivity and incorporate it into my business case. Well, I'm sorry, but again, that debate about measuring productivity has been going on for even longer. It's been going on since 7000 BC, when the Sumerians, they kind of explored the ratio, or they explored the output of their workforce, slaves, with how much it cost to provide that workforce in terms of food, accommodation, and basic healthcare. So this debate's been going on for a long time. I don't get the fact that we're saying we can't measure productivity. Empirical research studies looking at the impact of office design on business performance has been around since the early 20th century. It's all started with the interest in scientific management theory and workforce efficiency. And since then, and even before then, we've seen hundreds of studies which have proven, demonstrated, that there is a conclusive link between design and productivity. It's all out there, guys. Go and find it. In the 1990s, there was actually, I would say it's the mid-70s to the early 90s, there was a glut of research which, again, looked at the impact of environmental conditions or building services on productivity. And a lot of professional groups got together regularly at different conferences. So ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Engineers, and NEMA, National Electrical Manufacturing Association, they got together regularly and they came up with lists and lists of ways that we can measure business performance. And as I say, some of those metrics were then adopted and used in research. But the problem with that research is it kind of reports a wide range of productivity benefits. So in my own literature review, we saw productivity benefits for a single factor, like lighting or noise, ranging from 0.6% to 160%. And not only that, those studies take place in a wide variety of working environments or environments, and also they use very different metrics. And I think that the problem with that is that the financial director has got no confidence in that. There's no consistency. There's no credibility in that wide range of research and what they're reporting. So, as I say, we conducted our literature review. I looked at 200 papers. I actually threw 125 of them away. The papers I left, the ones that I did the meta-analysis on, 75 papers that had actually reported a quantified effect on business performance. And of those 75 papers, there were 135 clear reported effects. Now, what was unique about our literature review, compared to the others, is we weighted it for the relevance of those studies to the real-world office environment. So we actually worked with the Office Productivity Network. Paul Bartlett's in the audience. So we worked with the Office Productivity Network. So we looked at the research environment. If the study, this research study, or one of these 75 studies, was carried out in a laboratory, maybe, or it was carried out in a factory, like some of the earlier studies, it got low rating or low weighting. If it was carried out in a simulated office, a bit like Craig Knight's work, or was carried out in a real office, it got a higher weighting. We also looked at the performance metrics. So again, if it was something like a reading task, it might get a low weighting, whereas if it was an embedded business metric, we would give it a much higher weighting. And we also looked at the activity. So again, if it was something like mental arithmetic, it would get a low weight. Sorry, I'm going to explain that. We looked at how much time the experimental activity would normally take place in a real office. So something like mental arithmetic, to be honest, we don't do much of that during the day, so they got a low weighting. Whereas something like PC work, that would have received a higher weighting. So we weighted these 75 studies, and we came up with these results. So these are our revised, weighted productivity results. Maggie said I wasn't allowed to put any graphs in today, so that's why you've got pretty pictures. So now, first of all, I think these results are a little bit more realistic and a bit more palatable for the financial director. But the other thing I would say is they're actually quite low. The ranges are quite low. It's like, even if you look at the upper range of each effect, it's only going from 1.7% up to 4.4%, so it's pretty low. But think back to that pie chart. A small effect has a big influence. And actually, what we calculated is that you only need to improve performance, revenue, by about 5%, and it completely outweighs the cost of your building, construction, and operation. So although those numbers are small, they're pretty significant in other ways. Now, as designers, we don't just manipulate one factor, one design factor. We manipulate two. Unfortunately, we can't just add these up. So if I'm going to put in a new space with new lighting and new furniture, I can't just add the 2% from the lighting to the 2.1% from furniture. It doesn't work like that. We found a few studies. I do like to put an equation in my presentation, by the way. So, it's always good to have one in. So in our study, we found a few really good studies, mostly done in Denmark, which actually looked at multiple factors and how they affected overall performance. And basically, it kind of alluded to this relationship, which is just a law of diminishing returns. And the rule of thumb is you take the first factor, if it's lighting, whatever, and then the next factor is going to be 2/3 of the impact, and the third factor will be 1/3 of the impact, and a sixth, and so on. So we put that out there. I was expecting a lot of grief over that equation. I haven't had any yet. Maybe people haven't read the paper. But I just think it's a starting point. You can't just add things up. There's got to be a law of diminishing returns. Now, obviously, back in the 1990s. Let's go back to the 90s. Back in the 1990s, a few well-known, worldwide respected researchers, including myself, said that we expect that the environment and design could have a 5 to 15% impact on business performance. But we recognise that there are other more important factors, if you like, and I've tried to list some of them here for you. So I'm a fan of motivational theory. Hertzberg said, for example, motivational factors like reward, recognition, will have a big impact on your productivity. Whereas if we don't get things right, like design and environmental conditions, it's probably going to have a negative effect on your productivity. But the point is, there's lots of things out there that affect productivity, confounding factors or contributing factors. And I got thinking about this, and I was thinking of the metrics and how we measure performance. And my view is that the individual tasks, which you see in most studies, so for example, you might be looking at the impact of desk illuminance on a reading task. You know, they're the easy study. It's easy to measure, and there's a direct correlation to the environmental variable. But I think they have very little relevance to business. And on the other hand, the business metrics, which I like, unfortunately are affected by lots of factors other than design. But I think we need to move away from small individual tasks and variables and look at the big business embedded metrics that business is used to. Now, I did a little bit of research recently on the lawyers and offices. I called it Lawyers Like It Large, and it got a lot of attention for some reason. But what I discovered was there was a survey by the Lawyer magazine, and every year they do a survey of the top 200 UK firms, law firms. And normally they just ask about business, so what's your revenue, your turnover, how many staff you got, ratio of fee earners to secretaries and all that kind of thing. But last year they actually asked about property as well. And I'm just going to, and even more interesting, they came up with this metric, which I liked. And they reported revenue per square foot. So they reported revenue per square foot. And they used it as an indicator of how the building, property, supported the occupying business. And I latched onto that. I'm just going to take you through two of the lawyers' offices. So you can see from this slide that Allen & Overy is about 10 times bigger than Minster Law, 10 times bigger in terms of revenue generated. Allen & Overy, big city law firm, Minster Law, regional ambulance chasers, to be honest. But the point is that based on that slide, you would think Allen & Overy stars. But then when you look at the property metrics, it's different. So the first thing that you notice is that the total cost of occupancy per person for Minster Law is £2,000, £2,000 a person total cost of occupancy, compared to Allen & Overy, which is getting close to £20,000 per person. And then the other thing you notice, which I think is really more important, is that Minster Law generates about £1,500 per square foot in terms of revenue to that business. Whereas and that's twice what Allen & Overy did at about £630 a square foot. So to me, that chart's saying that Minster Law kind of got it right. It's an efficient space, but clearly it's supporting the occupying business. And I think that metric of revenue per square foot, it's a little bit like sales per square foot, which is a kind of universal metric for retail. So I think we're all in awe of the new new Apple shops. I found this stat, I think it dates back to 2010. In America, a shop in a mall typically generates about £340 per square foot in sales, so $40, sorry, in sales per square foot. Apple, at the same time, was generated 17 times that at $6,000 per square foot. And at that time as well, Apple's sales, in-store sales, increased by 70% compared to other shops, which the average is about 4% increase. So that's an amazing kind of story there. And I think it's data like that, the kind of sales per square foot or revenue per square foot, having data like that allows you to then start saying, okay, maybe there was an impact of the way that those shops were designed and managed on the performance of our business. but you've got to have those kind of embedded metrics. And I talked to a friend of mine at O2, and he's the senior retail analyst of O2, and he was previously with M&S, and he was previously, before that, he was with Sainsbury. And his job is basically tracking the performance of their stores. And he's saying the standard metric they use on a weekly basis is sales per square foot across their stores. And they monitor all their stores continuously. And they monitor them over time, and they monitor them across regions and across shops and so on. And the beauty of that, he's saying, is that if we do some kind of intervention, whether it's a new branding exercise, a shop fit out, or a regional advertising campaign, I can immediately see whether it's having an effect or not. And I can see how long that effect lasts. This data is embedded, it's crucial to them. Now, he wouldn't share the data, he's not that good a friend, obviously. But I did find this, I found this one online just to try and illustrate the point that we're making. So this one's actually shopping malls, shopping centres in the US, and it shows four shopping centres. And the story behind this chart is, so this is sales per square foot, obviously. The story behind this is the yellow one, Hickory Hollow, wasn't performing very well. It's clear from the chart. You know, as the other stores were having a bit of an upturn, Hickory Hollow didn't recover, so basically they shut it down. They said, we're not going to continue. And there's a lesson for workplace. And whereas the other one, like Governor Square, they actually, I think they did some refurbishment of the car park or something, and what they found with that is it kind of had a bit of a quicker recovery than the other shopping centres. So, you know, again, the point is that you've got to have this embedded, this kind of data. You've got to have it embedded. You've got to be tracking it all the time. You know, you know, my friend at O2 is saying, you know, that kind of data is fundamental to the business. You cannot operate without it. And yet, in workplace, you know, we rarely do the measure. We rarely do measure the impact of our office design on business performance. And when we do, it's a one-off. So then we try, you know, it's totally out of context. We're struggling to work out how that fits in with ongoing normal business, you know, business as usual. We're struggling to see that. And basically, you just can't untangle it because you haven't got that continuous metric. So, the other thing is you know, back to the point I made earlier, we seem to be obsessed with focusing on the minutiae, on these kind of metrics, like looking at the impact, as I said, of lighting on reading, you know, and that's got very little relevance to the whole business. So, as you can see, what I'm proposing is we need to use broader metrics recognised by the business. And I tried to work out the analogy to make it clear to you. Sitting out in the garden, a little glass of lager, and a bee landed on my hand. And I thought, right, worker bees, honeybees. I think it's like we're trying to measure the waggle dance of the honeybee and ignoring the amount of honey produced by the hive. And my proposal to you today is, let's measure the honey produced by the hive. It's obviously it's important how happy that little bee is. You know, we need to monitor that as well. But actually, as a businessman, as a financial director, I want to know what the impact is on my honey production. So, whatever people say, productivity can be measured. You know, don't let people say it's anything else. It's difficult, but it can be measured. If we want to do it, if as an industry we want to measure performance, we can do it. We just don't because we're lazy and we ignore it. And workplace design does affect productivity. There are hundreds of studies which clearly demonstrate this. What you do in your day-to-day jobs is going to affect your business. And just by not measuring it doesn't mean you can ignore it. I think we need to include business performance in our business cases for new workplace projects and move away from a focus on cost. Otherwise, guys, our job is just reducing cost. And I don't want to be in a business where I'm just reducing cost. I want to be in business where I'm making a difference and I'm making people happier and more productive. So put that in your business case. And as I said, ignoring that impact by not measuring it is irresponsible. And don't get obsessed with measuring the waggle dance of the honeybee. You know, measure business performance. Use the metrics that our FDs and our board already understand. They understand revenue, they understand cost, but they understand revenue, they understand shareholder value, all those things, you know. Those are the metrics we need to measure. And we need to measure them over time. The biggest issue is those variables, confounding variables, that affect productivity outside of design. So the only way we can control for those is by having a metric that we can monitor over time, and we can see little blips and differences and so on. And that's my presentation. It was quite complicated. I was a little bit nervous today doing it because it was a new one. But I've written it up on my little blog page. If you go to that page, it's all written down. You can read it at leisure, and you can even comment if you do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much.